guys, Ron here, and pretty much every day I get comments on my videos saying that my designs are better than Game Freak, that they should hire me, or that Game Freak makes worse designs than Fakemon artists like me. And while I appreciate the praise, I personally don't necessarily agree. I make Fakemon because I like Pokemon designs. The fact that a Pokedex can cater to so many different type of people is fantastic. But that doesn't mean that artists online can't make Fakemon that rival or even blow some Pokemon designs out of the water. There are tons of Fakemon who successfully represent a similar design or concept that a real Pokemon does, and I'm going to compare a bunch of them today. Keep in mind, I'm not going to be comparing amazing Fakemon with Pokemon that don't have any similarities. So if I'm, let's say, critiquing Greedent, I'm not going to compare it to a super awesome legendary Fakemon that has nothing to do with this fat squirrel and say, see, Fakemon are better than real Pokemon. Instead, I'm going to make sure to show you the closest possible concept that I could find online to the real Pokemon I'm comparing it to. But that also means that it'll be really hard to find any Fakemon that rival Pokemon from older generations, since Fakemon artists rarely design Pokemon with similar concepts to iconic Pokemon. But there are two rules you need to remember. First, no redesigns. I'm not going to compare a Pokemon to a Fakemon design that was deliberately made with any existing Pokemon in mind. Because obviously they're building upon and iterating on someone else's design, which is easier than coming up with a completely new Pokemon from scratch, like Game Freak does. So that means no predictions. When Pokemon are revealed, many times artists will try to make their predictions for an evolution. But again, they're basing their design on the Preval, so they have a basis from Game Freak to work with. Every Fakemon that we're going to be covering today will be completely original and simply happen to coincidentally be similar to a real Pokemon that was designed before or after. Capiche? Let's begin with a lukewarm take so you don't immediately click off. Swanna's okay. Not an offensive design, not the best Pokemon ever. There's room for more. I mean, it's a literal white canvas, so to be fair, I don't want to see a swan with complicated patterns. It's supposed to be mostly white. That's why when I was looking for a counterpart, I looked for a concept that matched the minimal aesthetic of Swanna, while still being beautiful. Agyswan by DIAPAUSE is exactly that. You kind of see what I'm looking for in this video now. Fakemon with concepts that aren't too far from the original Pokemon I'm comparing them to. What's cool is that in order to maximize the feminine beauty of this swan's design, DIAPAUSE made a male counterpart, Swan, that is equally as majestic. Not only are they gorgeous evolutions, but they could easily be the evolved form of Ducklet if you think about it. I'm sure some would prefer Swanna's more faithful swan-like body, but you gotta admit, these are super well designed. Finizen was one of the most anticipated Pokemon in history. We've wanted a bottlenose dolphin for so long, so its evolved form was never going to rival our imaginations. Nobody expected Palafin to be a straight-up superhero, and while I've had enough time to adjust and appreciate its hero form, many people are going to be forever disappointed. The problem in looking for a more successful dolphin Fakemon is that none of them are superheroes. I'm not going to compare it with another dolphin that has a completely different idea is trying to execute. The closest I could find was Vergolophus's Olymphica. It's not necessarily a superhero, it's more of an expert swimmer, but it has that superhero aesthetic nonetheless, without being extremely on the nose. The proportions are exactly what we assumed a dolphin Pokemon would have, the patterns are sleek, and the bubble goggles are iconic. Not to mention Tuttlelot is cute too. Here's a perfect opportunity to showcase how even amazing designs could be rivaled. Scyther is literally one of my favorite Pokemon, but even I believe a similar Mantis concept could be executed in a way that makes it look more like a bug and less like a dragon. So what if there were another praying mantis with blades? LuisBrain's Shinastik is the answer. Not only does it look more like a mantis, it also literally prays. It's this virtuous swordsman with antenna blades. It's far more creative. You know I love me grass-type starters with blades, so I can't help but love LuisBrain's design. Such a dynamic character. Fierce and friendly is my type of Pokemon. Now, I never thought of Palossand as unsuccessful. They honestly did the best with the most literal concept they came up with. But what if instead of a possessed sandcastle, we had a Pokemon that just looked like a sandcastle? We could go two routes. Many artists like FakeMakeT have made crabs covered in sand. I believe Carabash and Caracrush are the best of this variety. Or we can go on a more ambiguous crab-inspired design with an animal that resembles a sandcastle. A mollusk that collects sand and shells to look more majestic and stronger is what I'm looking for, at least. Lorenzo Livrieri's design does the job really well. Now, Greedent is intentionally dim-witted and cartoony looking, but also supposed to be a relatively normal squirrel without any crazy elemental powers. So while nobody online imagined a stupid fat squirrel Fakemon, a good representation of what a greedy, normal type squirrel could be is also one of my favorite Fakemon ever, designed by Siwoo Kim. The way they spin around the center of their acorn in order to attack their opponent is infinitely cool and charming. My dream is to get to this level of character design. Mightyena is another early root addition to many teams, but I wouldn't say there's anything necessarily wrong with it. It's a great Pokemon, but nothing is done about the fact that it's a hyena. So what if a striped hyena hunter was clearly more sinister looking without leaning on the dark type? The SamayaRegion's Dokurokuta is a ground poison type that looks as feral as Mightyena while having some more interesting bone and tribal attributes? Adornments. It's as ruthless as Mightyena and fits in the same niche. A very fun family. Garbodor's here to no one's surprise. For a pile of garbage, I think Game Freak did a fine job with this design. When other artists take a crack at a garbage Fakemon, they end up being over-designed or too ugly, without finding a great balance. Some of them also end up looking too unnatural and unlike an actual creature that could live in the world, like Garbodor. The best solution is toxic waste Pokemon, like Darksilvania's Polustrial. It's close to being a bit too complicated, but is without a doubt a well-made Pokemon. I'm not gonna lie. I love Darksilvania's designs. The family has great progression too, going from a barrel of waste to a monster that the sewers can't contain. A bit more intimidating than Garbodor without being overboard with how disgusting it looks. On the other hand, most of us can agree that Staraptor is a good Pokemon, but even talented artists can make designs that rival or surpass Game Freak's. Nyjee's Victrel pretty much embodies everything Staraptor and even Braviary does without being super edgy or over-designed, like many other fan-made Pokemon that would try to mimic the exaggerated swagger of a Staraptor. On the flip side, Bramblin is a Pokemon whose concept has much to be desired. I find it cute, but surely imagine that a ghost tumbleweed would be more creative. And surely, I'm using the word surely a lot. Surely, it wouldn't evolve into a simply creepier ghost tumbleweed. We can argue about how well the execution is, but the actual idea isn't anything genius. Neither is my design for a tumbleweed that becomes a cowboy, or Zaruda's Brambarb and Wickvine, but they're fine alternatives. But obviously I'm a bit biased. Now, I've grown to love Toucannon because I find the contrast between its simple design and extremely angry personality to be very engaging. And in battle, the way its beak is animated drives how important it is to see a design in context to fully critique it. But an intimidating Toucan could easily have a slightly different design. I think Toucusky by GregAndrade, I hope I pronounced it right, is closer to what fans would have expected if Game Freak told them that they were making a relatively simple looking toucan with a beak that is used as a projectile. This way fans wouldn't call it a literal toucan like they do with Toucannon. Klinklang, however, is a design that I haven't really grown to love. Maybe our opinions are less extreme and technically Magearna is a more popular gear Pokemon, but what if there was a gear Pokemon that was not supposed to mimic humanity like Magearna, or rather still looked like an entire object like Klinklang? Starboy's Anacog is basically that. It's ghost type, which usually makes object mons more palatable. Sure, once it evolves it strays away from what I'm looking for, but the first stage really proves that a gear Pokemon could be appealing. Bellibolt, on the other hand, was an attempt by Game Freak to strip any natural form and make a Pokemon that looks completely like a product, a mascot, a cute toy. But what if an electric frog was much more realistic, while still, being a pocket monster? You get this design by Wescos Fakemon. It even has that visible electricity shown within a translucent belly. And much like most of the designs I've shown today, it was designed before its Pokemon counterpart. It's totally valid to find Bellibolt's cuteness to be more appealing, but seeing the contrast between what is essentially the same concept is very interesting. Shiftry is far more popular, and the opposite of cute. There are a group who think Shiftry is too off-putting though, so what if there was another Tengu Pokemon that was far more approachable? Bird Diablo by Alisar is intimidating and even evil, but like Ceruledge, it can be seen as a dangerous ally that you can command. I love those kind of Pokemon. Sure, other Bird Diablo are bad dudes, but yours is special. That's what makes for a great Pokemon. Flamigo, though, is harder to take seriously, but I gotta give it credit. The contrast between this empty-headed look and aggressiveness is kind of the joke. The idea of a lawn flamingo-inspired Pokemon that starts beating you up is entertaining, but many fans would have wanted a more fabulous flamingo that embodies what we usually associate with flamingos, flamboyancy. But that's not what I'm going to show you. In order to truly compare ideas, I picked a Fakemon that is relatively simple, like Flamigo. Here is Brex Art's Flaseever. It's a psychic type with a fake face on the back of its head, but from the neck down it's just a flamingo, and that's good, because the colors, proportions, amount of detail, and even expression are enough to make it fantastical. That's a good, simple design. Okay, we're in the half point of the video. My back is killing me. Because now I got this green screen, and I don't want to have a seat behind me, so I'm sitting on like a small stool. I need a back. I need something on my back. But it's a good time to talk about some of the Pokemon that you would have thought would be in the video but aren't. Here are the reasons why. Well, first could be the easiest reason, just the fact that nobody made a good Fakemon with similar concepts as the unpopular Pokemon. For example, Stunjourner. I would like to show you another successful Stonehenge Pokemon, but I haven't found one that I thought was particularly clever. Colossal could have been a train, but there's no good train Fakemon. The only good ones are redesigns of Colossal. Bruxish is despised, but nobody has made a better Humu Humu Nuku Nuku Wapwa. There are many Pokemon who have concepts people simply never thought of until they were developed by Game Freak. I mean, who's designing a Keyring Pokemon to compete with Klefki? Sure, there are a ton of Plague Doctor Fakemon, but Aromatisse is a perfume bottle, can dancing, masquerade ball going Plague Doctor. Nobody else has had the audacity to combine those exact elements. Sometimes artists have similar concepts, but the design is a little too liberal. Liberal? Literal. All the ice cream Fakemon, for example, I've seen look even more explicitly like ice cream than Vanillux, who technically is just icicles in the shape of ice cream, which isn't a bad idea. Sometimes they'll have a good design, but they look nothing like a Pokemon. Sometimes an early gen Mon will simply have a later gen Pokemon that showcases its idea in a similar or even better way. Like how Amoonguss is a slightly more clever mimic than Electrode, or how the Musharna line is basically the Baku, like Hypno. I mean, I didn't look for a better Krabby, considering Crab Brawler is far more inventive. Frostlass is a far more appealing Yuki Onna when compared to Jinx. And if I'm looking for a far more genius take on a Ladybug, I'm not looking at Ledion, I'm looking at Orbeetle. God, I love that guy. But the number one reason I couldn't find similar designs to some Pokemon is just the fact that some Pokemon are too iconic. Not only does that mean that there will be less people trying to compete with existing designs, but even I wouldn't be impressed with some of the Fakemon that I see, because I'm already content with similar Pokemon like Poliwhirl, simply because I've been looking at it for 20 years now. Any criticism has already been forgotten. Unlike Sock, the karate Pokemon gets a lot of flack for being too humanoid, Muppet-like, and on the nose with a literal, clearly visible gi. Not too subtle of a design. So if we were going to get a better received karate Pokemon that was also bipedal, it'll probably look something like Hu-Gon-By's Chamrateka. It's as humanoid as Sock, but with more exaggerated proportions and more natural looking clothes-like patterns. This style would easily fit in Gen 3 and 4, giving it a nostalgia factor as well. Now, I have no gripes with Scyther, but there are other ways one could go about designing a land whale. I think Smogon's Colossoil is the direction I personally would have gone in. It's similar to Scyther, with the body consisting of, mostly a basic shape, in this case a cuboid, and the various spikes too. I love it. Cryogonal, on the other hand, has much more to be desired in the personality aspect, at least. It's not a terrible design, but most fans can't grow attached to it. Is it possible to still have a generic snowflake Pokemon with slightly more personality? I think Kipine pulled it off with Lufia and Royce. They are still very much literal snowflakes, but with more emotive eyes that I can grow attached to. Now, Wiglet is a riot, and Wugtrio is good, but when this regional fake was revealed, we hoped that the evolved form would be a bit more complicated. So, if we're looking for 3 eels that come out of a rock, look no further than Darksilvania's Thalassydra. I feel like if Game Freak was trying to make a serious family of eels, and perhaps even a pseudo-legendary line, this design would be more than adequate. Okay, why'd I say it so mildly? This thing is like, it's wicked. It would kick ass. I personally like Beartic, but many find it awkward and uninteresting for such a fierce inspiration. I mean, polar bears are crazy. I like how it's kind of like a mountain shape, but Adam Fegorito imagines a more igloo-shaped polar bear. While I would have preferred the brown fur to be more white or blue, the actual composition of this Fakemon is 10 out of 10. Now, while I commend Game Freak for giving us a satisfying graffiti Pokemon, complete with a gas mask and hoodie aesthetic, I think Goompy's Cymerk did the trick already. It pretty much has everything Graphia has, and not only does it fit in with a pair that showcases the primary colors of pigment and light, but also makes sense with the concept that they embody. I mean, bugs releasing noxious fumes is rooted in reality. This would honestly be one of my favorite bug types, if it were real. Simipour is far from my favorite Pokemon, and sea monkeys are a concept that many artists have experimented with, but most of them look way too aquatic to compare to Simipour. I think the best counterpart would be Varmints's Shrimpanzee. It's definitely scarier, but it looks more like a natural creature than Simipour, at least, whose water typing feels tacked on, to me. But Tiny Mongrel here is one of the best Fakemon ever. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I think this is how you design a Fakemon, like a perfect Fakemon. Every aspect of it is successful and uses the formula that I think makes for a good Pokemon design. While most of us have grown to love Mousehold, I don't think this is the best way to execute a group of mice. The designs are relatively uninspired to me. The concept is great, but other than the fact that they're cute, there's simply nothing clever about them. I think the best Fakemon about their design. That's why incorporating the 3 blind mice into their concept was a great idea by Thomas Jochum. Now they have a reason to stick together, and their body is filled with genius details like tiny cane tails and glasses ears. This could totally be a Gen 10 Pokemon if Mousehold didn't already exist. Now hear me out. Don't jump to conclusions here. But Luxray, hear me out! Luxray, it's one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, literally. Like, I like it more than you, so shut up. But the concept of an electric cat is very popular. I mean, Pokemon already has like 3 of them at least, so it makes sense that some other talented Fakemon artist would make a cool, dark-looking electric-type cat that rivals Luxray. I think Pansius is just that. Unfortunate name, but Nyjee's creation could be as popular as Luxray if it were real and Luxray were not. I want more of this kind of Pokemon. Just undoubtedly magnificent beasts. Now, y'all mind if I praise Scovillain? It ain't bad, but we could do better. Did I say praise? I meant, like, mildly applaud. The thing is, many people have made Grass Fire Pepper Pokemon, but we have to compare it to a Grass Fire 2-headed Pepper Pokemon. That's a tongue twister. It's kind of like a tongue twister, I guess. And guess what? There are actually quite a bit of them online. Of the ones that are super similar to Scovillain, I think Adam's Chiligon is the best. If this was literally swapped with Scovillain, I would be totally satisfied. Like, nothing is lost. I like how it appears to be as or more powerful, but manages to look less atrocious than Scovillain. It has this balance of cute and cool that great Pokemon have. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Slurpuff, but I don't hate it. The thing is that most other pastry-based Fakemon look too much like a dessert, so I can commend Slurpuff for not being over the top. But you do have to keep in mind that since it's a meringue dog, I have to compare it to other pastry pets. So behold Fungusmon's Sugar Roar. It even has a sweet and sour form. I think this is a more clever combination of sugar and animal, but that's just me. The final Fakemon I'm showcasing is the fan-made creation that was so inspiring and breathtaking when I first saw it, that it kinda ruined a lot of new Pokemon that were revealed to me in later generations. I'm of course talking about Silverava's famous Vulpan. If this Pokemon existed, it would be in my top 5. This electric red panda trumps Zeraora, Palmot, and is even slightly a better red panda Pokemon when compared to Beware? But that's debatable. I need to be validated in thinking that this is one of the best Pokemon in existence. It was made in 2010 and still holds up. And if you think this video holds up, let me know by leaving a like and subscribing for more. And perhaps take a look at some of my Fakemon videos. Make sure to check the description for the music I used, the t-shirts I made for you guys, and my Patreon where you can get cool rewards like seeing my videos days early, which you can also do by clicking the join button and becoming a member. Make sure to follow me on Twitter where I show sneak peeks of Fakemon designs, and I'll see you guys very soon.